Like everyone else, I've struggled to explain to people what the hell NFTs are. Whether friends or family or people I'm trying to convince that Web3 has some kind of value and that there's more to NFTs than just a big Ponzi-fueled lottery. Maybe you've struggled with this too. It's genuinely difficult. I think most people, even those in the NFT space every day, barely begin to grasp the power and versatility of this technology. If the right picture is worth 1,000 words, the right metaphor is worth 1,000,000 words, and maybe more. After failing to explain NFTs many times, I came up with a metaphor which I think works fairly well. Even if you think you know what NFTs are, this may open up more perspective for you. I've tested this on many people, as have others I've shared it with. It seems to work. Keep listening if you'd like to finally be able to understand what the hell are NFTs. When people like Punk6529 say that you are insufficiently bullish about NFTs, some may think it's an exaggeration, but if you really understand what NFTs are, it becomes clear that it's not at all. Maybe even Punk6529 is insufficiently bullish. We tend to understand new things best by comparing them to old things. This is why analogies and metaphors can be so effective in communicating new ideas. So without further ado, here is my favorite metaphor that I use to explain NFTs. NFTs are like digital pieces of paper. Let's elaborate on this a little. Pieces of paper are an incredibly powerful and versatile technology. Trying to describe exactly why that is pretty difficult, just like with NFTs, because they have so many different uses. Pieces of paper can be used to draw on. You can draw diagrams on them to understand or to explain things, org charts, flow diagrams. You can even use these diagrams to help with calculations. You can draw pictograms to communicate. You can draw pretty pictures and make art. You can paint on them and make different art. You can draw schematics for complicated devices, or plans for building skyscrapers and use them to communicate with large teams to get things done. You can sketch people's faces to help the police recognize them. You can also make art or constructs with the paper itself in 3D, from origami to elaborate sculptures made out of books. You can wet the paper and turn it into papier-mâché and make a solid object out of that. Apart from drawing, you can also write on pieces of paper. You can write anything you can think of. You could write a message to someone, or a poem, or a story, or a whole book. It could be a book of fiction, a story you've dreamed up from your heart, or it could be a book of facts that you've observed during your life. You can write your personal diary. You can write to someone who died a long time ago and get stuff off your heart, or write to someone who isn't born yet. You can try to communicate any ideas or wisdom that you're aware of to pretty much anyone, dead or alive, just with pieces of paper. You can write on pieces of paper to keep a ledger. With these pieces of paper, then you can operate a business or a stock market or any kind of organization that needs to keep track of things. You can write agreements on pieces of paper. You can write down laws. You can write down the details of court cases. You can run a whole justice system with pieces of paper. You can record history, and you can also rewrite it and lie about it. You can even record music on paper. Musical notation enables this. You could write the entire arrangement for an orchestra on pieces of paper. Are we done yet? Hell no! You can use pieces of paper to represent money and wealth. You can use them to represent it indirectly too, as debt obligations or promissory notes or property deeds or shares or derivatives contracts. You can define a nation's founding principles on a piece of paper and use it to inspire the creation of a whole new country. You can organize humanity in new ways. You can make identification papers and passports out of pieces of paper. You can use pieces of paper to allocate life support. You can use pieces of paper to save lives. Pieces of paper are an awesome technology with an incredibly widespread impact throughout our society. And since they became cheap and widely available, they put huge amounts of power into everybody's hands, multiplying what was possible with the more expensive and more cumbersome substrates that came before. If you had to explain to someone in the European 11th century why pieces of paper were a foundational, transformative technology, you might have struggled, just like with NFTs today. Perhaps someone back then might have focused their explanation on a specific use case. Hey, you know that ledger you've been keeping on expensive wax tablets or parchment? How about paper instead? Now your ledger is more durable and or cheaper. Neat, right? But by now, I think most people presented with a suggestion that pieces of paper have been a foundational, fundamental, super versatile technology that changed the world will accept that truth as obvious. So NFTs are a lot like that. By the way, talking about likes, there is another fundamental technology called the like button. It helps more people to see videos like this, and so they start to understand what Web3 is all about. Go ahead and hit it now, and maybe subscribe if you find this video interesting. NFTs are digital pieces of paper that last forever, automagically keep track of everything that's happened to them, can do clever stuff, and can be sent around the world instantly. Depending on the blockchain they're on and how they're designed, they're also perhaps uncensorable and impossible to eliminate once created. They're like magic, somewhat intelligent, indestructible pieces of teleporting paper. And just like pieces of paper, you can use them for all sorts of things, though we're still only at the beginning of discovering all their potential uses. You can use them to store art, or even generate it, because unlike regular paper, they are dynamic and programmable. You can use use them to store and send messages. You can also use them to store and send music in various forms. Because they're smarter than regular paper, NFTs are also very good at recording contracts. You can program the agreements you make into an NFT if you want, with some limits. You can specify how the pieces of paper will be able to behave in the future. You can put any information you want in this new format. You can make NFTs with articles in them, or NFTs with links to articles. You could publish a novel inside an NFT. You can, and people already do, serve legal papers as NFTs. You can store your identification papers as NFTs, or just an authentication token for a website or a club. And you can use NFTs to represent money and wealth and related things, of course. An NFT can be an analog of a share, or a promissory note, or a debt obligation, and so on. And of course, as has been popular in the last couple of years, that means you can also run Ponzi schemes using NFTs. It's almost a law of nature. If something can be used to exploit people's greed and run a Ponzi scheme, it will be. Well, NFTs are versatile enough to do that too, as we've seen. You can also link NFTs with other NFTs and have them interact with each other, which you can't really do with pieces of paper. The sky's the limit then. Now, not all of those users are smart, just like not all of the things you can do with pieces of paper are worth doing. But they're possible because NFTs are just that versatile. They can be made into an infinite variety of things. The point of this metaphor, of course, is not to suggest that NFTs are exactly like pieces of paper. It's to get across the idea that they are a foundational, fundamental, incredibly versatile technology with nearly infinite use cases. This is what makes them so hard to explain succinctly. In my experience so far, even people who have never encountered Web3 or crypto, and even those who are slightly hostile to it, instinctively grasp the potential of NFTs when explained with this metaphor. Then, when I start talking about a specific use case for NFTs, like my favorite, the Kickstarter on steroids model, they can see how, yeah, of course, you could use digital pieces of paper for this. It's easy to accept then. In my experience, you don't need to use as many examples as I used earlier to get the point across. Once the other person understands that pieces of paper are an infinitely versatile and foundational technology, it's a good time to shift into explaining how NFTs similarly have so many use cases. Then, once they get that, move into the specifics that you want to talk about. I hope this metaphor works for you when explaining NFTs to your friends, family, colleagues, or random people you meet at parties. Let me know how it goes in the comments. Or if you have an even better metaphor, please do share it so we can all get better at explaining NFTs. And if you did find this useful, I'd appreciate it if you did hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks a lot for your time and attention. GM and good luck.